industry panel discussion. As you all know, my name is Christina Hudson, and I'm director of the Washington Interactive Network, which, as I mentioned earlier this morning, we are the economic development program that Enterprise Seattle fully funds that is focused on interactive media. We've been around since 2004 is when the program started, and it was really developed by working with industry executives, and they helped develop the strategic plan. And just the long and the short of it, over the last 5 years, we've helped to grow the industry over 4,000 people and over $400 million in economic development. So it's been a pretty innovative way to do economic development, and we're happy to be helpful to this industry, and we're hoping that they'll continue to grow in our region. So I want to actually just go down the line, and let's just go ahead and do some self-introductions. And if you can tell us who you are, your company, a little bit about the company, because people may not be familiar. And go ahead and start, Jared.
You want to start? Okay, great. Well, first of all, thanks for Prosperity Partnership and WIN, which has been, I think, really instrumental in the area in terms of getting people interested in the game industry and educating them and helping people kind of get their first foot through the door with the Gaming 101 series that you do. So that's fantastic. So my name is Jared Neuenhaus. I head up marketing for a small company in Bellevue called Her Interactive. Company was founded in 1995. We are one of the leaders in the mystery adventure game genre, and we are the pioneer in a company that specifically creates games for female game preferences. Hence why I handed out all the Nancy Drew games there. That is our #1 franchise. We have now sold well over 10 million copies, which, to put in some perspective, total number of units has surpassed some other well-known brands like Myst, Harry Potter, and I think Tomb Raider, just to name a few that you might have heard of before. Along with selling that many games, we've also won over 23 Parents' Choice Awards. So we, as you can tell, are very much going after family, kids, and specifically girls and their moms or grandmas that remember reading the Nancy Drew books and enjoyed reading them and like to play the games. About myself, I don't know, I've been in the game industry for a while now. I think it started when I first saw The Last Starfighter, and I started getting interested in games. And I don't know how many of you remember that movie, but I watched it again too last night, okay. And I keep thinking, man, they've got to make a remake of that movie, but anyways. If you haven't seen it, I would say it is kind of cheesy now, but in 1984, it was like hot stuff. So, anyways, but you know, my career background is in marketing, but also really this interactive entertainment, and in this form, taking the form of games. But love the industry, great people, very creative, and love being a part of it.
Great.
Thanks, Christina. My name is Joe Tringali. I'm the general manager at Fifth Cell. We're Bellevue, so a local game developer with 65 employees. Primarily develop on the Nintendo DS. I don't know if anybody here has kids that have a DS or have a DS yourself, but it's a pretty popular game platform made by Nintendo. So our first big title in 2007 was called Drawn to Life. It was a title where you were able to draw your own hero, and that's sort of put us on the map. We sold about 1.5 million copies. Our next title, which actually did better, was Scribblenauts, 2009. It's a pretty cool title where you write any word that you can think of, and it comes to life in the game, and you use those objects to solve puzzles. It was the best-selling DS title outside of Nintendo for 2009, and we did a sequel in 2010, Super Scribblenauts, which was the best-selling non-Nintendo game on the platform. So I've been pretty excited. We're working on Xbox now as well as some iPhone titles. So doing a variety. Our thing is marketable innovation. So we really try to come up with ideas that have never been done before in the game space. So ideas that appeal to a very broad audience. My personal background, I worked at a couple publishers in the online game space, but and then the current business partner in Fifth Cell, we started a company back in 1999 and didn't do so well.
And now we're one of the more successful ones. I'm Jeff Popst. I'm from Hidden Path Entertainment, which is also a Bellevue video game developer. We're 33 people and have been around for about 5 years as Hidden Path. We're a little different than a lot of other developers in that we're intentionally a smaller group that has more experience and background. We tend to average 12 years of experience and 10 shipped titles per person at the company. That's our average, which is pretty amazing. Often a game development company will have a small senior staff and a very large junior staff that kind of implement. And so we take kind of more of almost a consultant style approach to developing games as well. Our customers have been Microsoft, Nintendo, Sony, and another Bellevue company here, Valve. And right now we're working really closely with Valve on a new unannounced title that we can't talk about, but it's for the Xbox, the PS3, the PC, and the Macintosh. And that's probably that's a quick overview of Hidden Path.
Excellent. My name is Ellen. I work for PopCap Games. We're in Belltown in Seattle. We've been around since 2000. I started with PopCap in about 2005. We were 40 people in the Seattle office. We're like final count today, 478 employees worldwide. Crazy. Seattle's our headquarter office. We also have about 100 people in Shanghai and about 60 or so people in Dublin, and then a very small studio in San Francisco. We just acquired Zip-Zap Play studio in San Francisco, and then we have another studio in Vancouver, BC, that does all of our Mystery PI stuff. Our big titles, Bejeweled is our flagship title. It came out in 2000. It continues to be a huge part of our business, and there's subsequent versions and stuff in that franchise. We're on the Xbox, PS3, DS, PC, Mac, iPhone, iPad, any place, Facebook, any place our games are fun to play, we're going to be. And our mission is to make great games. We are first and foremost a game developer, although we do publish our own stuff and do all the marketing and everything for our materials. Other titles, Plants vs. Zombies was a huge hit a couple of years ago, continues to be amazing. We just opened actually a clothing store in China for Plants vs. Zombies. And there's lines out the door. It's quite the phenomenon there. It's awesome. Zuma and Bookworm are two of our other titles. As far as my history, I actually worked with our CEO at a previous company a few years back, and he brought me onto PopCap as the advertising sales director. So I did advertising sales for PopCap.com. I moved into HR in 2007, and I run a group called Workforce Culture and Environment. So we handle facilities, and we make sure our employees are engaged and loving what they do. That's my story.
Thank you very
Sticking to
much.
it.
So I want to talk about business climate and why this region is a hub for this kind of industry. So I just want to kind of go down the line and see what your thoughts are of what makes this region a great place to do business in this particular industry.
Well,
Who wants to start?
I'm happy to start. I did homework. We'd originally asked the VP of HR to participate today, and she couldn't, so I'm pitch hitting, so I figured I'd better get all the information I could together before I got here. But, one of the things that we're certainly experiencing in this area that makes it a great place to have a game company is just the pool of talent to pull from, for our staff. We are very much, first and foremost, focused on our people and hiring the right people, and then treating them really well. So having this kind of environment with, Amazon and Microsoft and all these companies you see here today, it's a real benefit to be able to pull from that talent. It also has challenges in terms of making sure people are happy and engaged and successful, but it's certainly a benefit of this area.
The thing that when you're making video games, a lot of people immediately go, oh, you're a software company. And software is part of it, but we're not. We're an entertainment company. And we have to think like an entertainment company. The kind of talent we're looking for is entertainment company talent. And they're here. And it's entertainment with software as our medium for entertainment. And the artists that are needed, the musicians, and the programmers that are needed to create that entertainment. And so we're different in some ways in this area than the Silicon Valley, where it's a very technical programming culture, but not as much an entertainment culture. But there are some good game companies in that area. Different than LA, where it's very much a story-based culture and entertainment, but not necessarily has the technical acumen. You won't find very as good programming talent there. But because of Microsoft, Nintendo, Sierra earlier, and some other big companies that were in this area, a lot of the talent came here initially. And then this, one other thing about our being an entertainment company is there's a lot of creative, and around a lot of creative, even if you're not fully going to embrace it, there's a lot of entrepreneurial spirit. And from that entrepreneurial spirit, either a lot of companies have spun off, or people have joined smaller companies and were willing to take more risks, in part because they're creative individuals who want that opportunity to be more creative themselves. And this area really facilitates all of that.
Yeah, and another big key, which was one of the big reasons we set up in Seattle, was the sort of the school infrastructure. You visited DigiPenn earlier, and a lot of our initial hires were straight out of DigiPenn, and a bunch of them are still with us. So it's a great school. It's great for startups. They can get students, and they don't have to pay expensive salaries. The existing talent that comes from a lot of the game developers in the area is a kind of a pro Endicon. You're competing with a lot of companies. There's a lot of people, but you're also competing with a lot of companies. So it's probably one of the biggest strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, I don't know if I can add much onto that. I think, the great, as Jeff mentioned, the talent pool to pull from here, the creative resources are fantastic. I think the community that's surrounded that, the great schools that we now have around here, be it DigiPenn, University of Washington, or Bothell, have all facilitated just a great community. I mean, our challenge being a smaller developer is keeping the great talent away from PopCap or Big Fish. But we love them, and I also think that's great. I mean, I also think that the game industry tends to be a very, well, for the most part, quite collaborative too. I mean, I'm constantly learning from other game companies or what they're doing differently, either be it in the games they're developing or how they're marketing it or whatever. And I think that for the most part, they're very open about sharing, and I think that's been a great benefit for the industry as well.
Unlike a lot of other businesses, we're not true competitors. We're all trying to create a great thing, and if two great things come out, we've seen them both sell. So unless you really have a title that's really trying to take the criteria away from another one, it's very rare to us ever really even act as competitors to each other. The one other thing I would say too is that I remember working with a company out of Nebraska. They felt they were looking for the least expensive place to live, where their dollars could go the farthest, they could pay their people to come, and they would be able to live like kings because they lived in a place where the median average wage was not as high. And it doesn't really work, especially with creative people. This pro-con that we have of a lot of companies being here is actually a real attraction to a potential employee to come to this area because they feel fairly safe that if it doesn't even work out so well with that company, there are other options around, and there's lots of good options around of places they'd want to work. So there's kind of that almost fast food model where fast food restaurants all locate in kind of the same area because the average consumer for fast food knows they want to get something and they're not sure, and they decide when they get there. So they put it together, and kind of we've done the same, I think, with video games to some extent. There's a lot of places here, and the talent goes, oh, I'm comfortable moving there if I'm not already in Seattle because there's lots of options.
Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons when I was creating the Washington Interactive Network website, upon industry request, it was really made to try to attract talent because we can grow as fast as we can, from our own, but we needed talent tomorrow or, a week from now. So it was really important to create a portal of information that made this region attractive because, especially a few years ago when we developed it, people, were thinking, oh, Seattle, what's up there? They were comparing us to New York and San Francisco and didn't realize how much cool stuff there was to do, whether you're single or family life and things like that. But that workforce is definitely a driving issue, as you heard from our panelists. In 2010, we released a competitiveness study, which I think I mentioned before, and we looked at 12 cities across the U.S., particularly for this industry, what made these regions attractive to companies, but also we took a look into Canada. And workforce, as we talked about, is the #1 reason why companies will locate. But one of the things we did notice in that study was that incentives are playing a big game right now. I mean, almost every state has an economic incentive to locate their company to a region. Canada's going crazy with that. And coming from the film industry, I spent 11 years working at the film office, and I know how that incentive game can play out. So it's something that I'm very interested to know what you all think about the incentive game. And is it an issue today, and or will it be one in the future, and something we need to pay attention to?
Yes.
Yes. Can you give an overview of the environment, like what it's like?
So today, I get a call from Rhode Island where they'll loan me $1 million per employee with no interest, as long as I stay there for a certain time. Or I can go to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where they'll give me no taxes for 10 years. Or I can go to Michigan, where they'll give me free office space for 10 years. Those are just the 3 of the week. Who else is doing stuff? There's pretty much every state seems to have a program. We think it's great. We're video game developers, but what we're finding is that a lot of governments really want the people who work at video game companies in their area. They're more highly paid than typical. They're not, there's not just one kind of personality. There's not just a tech personality or art personality. You have typically well-rounded. They tend to participate in the communities. They tend to get involved and spend money in their communities, perhaps more than some other businesses where people travel a lot or something like that. So there's a lot of reasons why they think, oh, this would be good for getting more people like this at these, from an age group point of thing, we have people from, graduating right out of college in their 20s, and we do have employees, 50s and 60s as well. We have a wide range, but we probably average 35, 36 is kind of the average across many companies. I don't know, I haven't followed that as close. Yeah.
With all those incentives, why do you stay?
Well,
People.
yeah, it's where everybody is. All those states are great and all, but they're starting off. It's like, if you want to go to Louisiana, I don't want to go to Louisiana. Or to New York, I don't want to go to Rhode Island. I don't want to go to Michigan. That's the bottom line. But there are people that will. So, it's like, I don't think you're going to see a mass exodus of people leaving Seattle, but, the next company that's choosing where to start, they're going to look everywhere, and they're going to say, well, I could start in Bellevue, but, taxes are higher, there's no incentives, or I could go, to Louisiana, and maybe they're going to be, the next, PopCap. So it's like, it's not necessarily, I think, about people leaving. I think it's more about companies that are looking for a place to start up.
And have you thought about, is there anything that you would hope government would do to help keep you here, make you successful, or have you thought on the other end, if government were really stupid and they went this far, then
Well,
we
there
probably
was-
would leave?
There was a proposed sales tax on custom software development last year that
Yes.
thankfully didn't pass, but
That
that
had
would have
passed. That might have been reason to leave.
Yep.
that would have
Yep.
possibly killed
Absolutely.
a lot of software companies in our area.
Because of big financial impact?
Oh yeah, it's sales tax was like 9.some% here.
Yeah, we make, our business is an entertainment business, which means we tend to do projects that we put as much as we can in creatively to make them as good as possible. So the base margin on your best expectation of what it could do is pretty low, and you're shooting to be a hit, to be successful, to break through, that people want you, and then make large multiples. But our general margins for if it doesn't connect with consumers are not that high, and so a 10% sales tax could kill it, or cut it almost down to nothing.
Yeah, I think, these incentives, I think start getting some traction. It could be a real concern for the industry in this area, but I think we all agree the number one resource any of us have is the talent that we have, and it's here. Now, if, there are some cities out there, maybe like Austin, for example, that has some traction, and some companies are looking at that as a very viable place because it has a lot of things that Seattle can offer, and a growing creative base or talent base there, and a quality of life that, that is fairly comparable, depending on what your interests are. But, once those start to get traction, or if, these tax issues, then it can really hurt the industry very, very quickly. And then I think a lot of smaller companies would look to move very, very quickly because they just could not handle that kind of shift so quickly. I mean, larger companies would have maybe the luxury of kind of, waiting it out maybe a little bit, but even they would have to start to look at alternatives at some point.
And we didn't talk about the Canadian incentives, which are even larger, especially Montreal and Quebec. But I think it's going to hit the smallest companies, like we talked about, and potentially the largest companies, where the bottom line can really dramatically change them. Where do I set up my next studio? If I'm Microsoft Game Studios, I could add another 50 people here in Redmond, or I could add 50 people in North Carolina, and there's some other places I work, and North Carolina is adding some new incentives in Charlotte and Raleigh, the Raleigh region. I think you'll see not necessarily exodus, but maybe lack of growth from the bigger companies.
Yeah, the stuff that I can, going back to sort of the talent pool, you know, we're having more and more to hire people from other areas into the Seattle office because the talent pool is so competitive here. And so having our local neighborhoods and government provide a city and that's attractive to people is really important to us. And you know, it was one of the things that when I asked, you know, around the company in the last few days about what, you know, what we would like, what would help us make that sale easier, it was, you know, I mean, traffic came up as the first one, you know, not having a you know, real robust public transportation system in the area when they're looking at two different cities. You know, we need to compete with places like San Francisco and New York and Chicago, and so having a really strong infrastructure and strong public schools is a huge deal for us. You know, more and more people in the video game industry have kids. That wasn't true, I'd say 5-10 years ago. But people are growing up now and getting married and having kids, so that, you know, having good public schools is important. And you know, the other thing that came up was really having a strong bandwidth pipeline around the area, so that no matter where you live in this area, you have a really strong, robust internet connection, so that, you know, if you are, like, I'm in West Seattle, so I'm starting to experience the viaduct excitement. And so, you know, me having a really fat pipeline into my house allows me to be able to work at home some days so that I don't have to deal with, you know, twice the normal commute. So it's that type of stuff that is really important as we bring talent into this area, which is what we all want. You know, having those services and the infrastructure around the area is really important.
Just going off on the attracting talent. Oh, sorry.
Real quickly, we've talked a lot about having talent and needing talent, and we did visit DigiPenn, but they have limited capacity like others. A few of us are here from educational institutions, Bellevue and Shoreline. What can we do to help provide talent through our programs while balanced against cumulative education cuts of 20%? We have choices to make.
What kind of choices do you have to make?
How best to utilize those resources to prepare students, how we partner and work with industry in that effort.
I would go, my opinion, and this goes across, you know, all game programs in the United States, is they're far too broad.
Yes.
They're kind of, they're set up to sort of give students an idea of what is like a, you know, like how do you make a game completely, where a student will never need to either know or do that. So, you know, it's like if I had the choice between hiring five professors and hiring 2 that were very specialized in specific areas and sort of focusing on those programs, like I would probably focus on, you know, less staff, you know, and more specialization.
The specialization is what we're seeing. 5-10 years ago, if you hired a programming student, they knew how to program one language and they knew the ins and outs and depths and how to go into the compiler. And that understanding and the problem solving really allowed them to learn other languages when they needed to. And what we're seeing with students now is they know a little bit of 10 different programming languages, very broad, and not able to really be as useful right away. They have a lot more learning to do as they come to us, even out of a DigiPenn. It depends on the student, but and going into that. And so the specialization is something I cannot echo enough. And it even applies on the art side as well.
Well, and for us, we're having more and more internships as well. That's one of the programs that we're doing, you know, ramping up on. You know, like we said, the game community is very active in the community in Seattle. You know, part of my group's focus is community outreach, and you know, we do tours of kids through the office all the time, showing them that, you know, they can play video games, but then they can actually come work in the industry and be successful. So if you're, you know, at an institution where you think that, you know, an internship or going for office visits or anything like that will help supplement your program or get people interested or, you know, see what's outside of school, you know, we're happy to certainly participate in that in any way that we can.
Thank you.
I think I'm just going to finish that and then we'll get to you. I think in 2009, 2010, we did a workforce study where we had education and industry. Bellevue College was there, where we had education and industry across the table from each other. And there was a lot of really, and I know Norma was there. She was participating, and I think we covered a lot of ground, and I have some really great information, if you haven't seen it yet, I can send to you. And one of the topics was internships, and there is a level of difficulty, and maybe, I don't know what your internships are like, but, you know, getting the students ready to go into that internship as far as the qualifications needed to get them, and then also as far as behalf of the company, it takes them a few months to get up to speed on what they're doing, so by the time they're done with their internship, they're just becoming valuable. So you need it to be almost, at this point in time, bigger companies to support the internship programs, because the smaller guys don't have the time to train somebody, because every moment of every day of what they're doing is getting that product off the ground and into the market.
There's a lot of mentorship involved in internships, which is why it takes some bandwidth, and the
We're
more that
exploring
you can
converting
help
them.
us do that.
Sorry, we're exploring converting them potentially to immersion experiences over an entire period to lessen, so we would need that kind of receptivity for collaboration.
Yep.
Well, her interactive, it's a big deal too, the internships, and we try and not only part with the community, but with also other organizations, be it Girl Scouts or whatever, that makes sense, and you know, they are constantly able to come in, meet, you know, even for a day at 24 hours working at a game company, or the internship can be longer in terms of their area of interest, again, be it marketing or art or development or whatever it might be, but we always try and provide those opportunities.
Is there any danger that if the big companies were to make that investment in mentoring people, having these internships, that once they finish that internship period, that one of the smaller companies will offer them a bigger salary and take?
Well, we need to keep our people happy in other ways, you know, I mean, that's my whole group's focus, right? Workforce culture and environment. Engagement is one of the biggest things that we, you know, I mean, money's important, but it's not everything. And so, you know, we definitely have had people get offered bigger salaries from other companies, and they don't leave PopCap because we are who we are. You know, we do a lot to invest in our employees on a regular basis. Most of the profit goes back to the employees through a profit sharing program. You know, we really are more like a family than we are a business. We take care of each other, and there's lots of investment that we make in our employees. So, you know, that's where that becomes really important. You know,
I think that's always a challenge. I think
Culture is
you're
really
always-
important.
the culture is huge.
It is.
Yeah.
To the employee.
I raised the question, and just wondering if government should think about somehow subsidizing the costs of those closely supervised internships.
Like anyone here would.
I'd be
Yeah, I
happy
don't
to.
think, yes.
And
Yes.
I'd be happy to coordinate. I mean, we do have workforce development incentives,
It would have to be something at the state level.
like a customized training program. I know there's some things there that I don't know how that would play in, but we have someone here from Workforce Development Council. But that's an interesting idea, and I think we should talk about it later.